Weiss, though, has said he can't talk about it because it's an ongoing investigation.
Well, he's going to have to.
And what are you guys going to do to compel them? Are you going to?
I think you cannot sit back and hide behind and have an attorney general say one thing, you say something else in private. What do you have to hide? Wouldn't you, first and foremost, why would you wait so long to respond even? If you knew this was a question, if you knew because of the attorney that you were, because you worked for the Attorney General and others, and that it would rise to such a constitutional question, why wouldn't you step out the first day and say, I got nothing to hide, let's talk about what was said. This was right or this was wrong. Why do you want to mince words inside a letter itself and be delayed? That just raises more issues.
That's Kevin McCarthy talking about this U.S. attorney by the name of Weiss, who's pushing back on some of these, well, the concerns that have been raised by the IRS whistleblowers looking into this however many years long investigation now into Hunter Biden's, or an absence of an investigation, maybe is the best way to put it, into Hunter Biden's criminal activities, his financial activities. I mean, there's a lot of criminal activities there. Welcome back to the program. Dana Loesch here with you. Bottom of this third hour. Listen coast to coast terrestrially. Stream the show or watch the simulcast, channel 347, DirecTV, YouTube, Facebook. Joining us right now, Congressman Jim Jordan, beautiful state of Ohio. Of course, he's been one of the people leading the charge against this. And you were tweeting about this earlier, I saw as well, Congressman. You said that David Weiss says he wasn't denied special counsel status in the Hunter Biden case. The IRS whistleblowers testified that the opposite was true. I just went over all of this for our listeners last segment. Your response on this, because I don't trust the Biden DOJ.
Well, Gary Shapley, the whistleblower, is very, very credible. And this is a 14-year veteran, handled some of the biggest international tax evasion, tax fraud cases. And he was the guy selected for this. He was like the man when it came to this area. And he says one thing and the U.S. attorney says the other. Who are you going to believe? And particularly now when you think about this Justice Department, all we've seen there. He also says, David Weiss also said, I could bring charges in the Central District of California if I wanted. I can bring charges in Washington, D.C. Really? Gary Shapley says the opposite. So someone's not being square with this. And again, I think the whistleblower seems entirely credible. In fact, he's been retaliated against. The Department of Justice kicked him off the case, kicked him off the investigation. So look, we want to talk to Mr. Weiss. We want to talk to the Assistant U.S. Attorney, Leslie Wolf. We want to talk to 11 other people, 13 people we'd like to talk to. Let's make that happen, Merrick Garland. Let's let that happen. And God bless the Speaker for pressing on this. We need to get the answers for the country because it's supposed to be equal treatment, one standard, equal treatment under the law.
You brought up Merrick Garland because one of the letter that he had sent, apparently that Weiss had sent, I think this was a letter that was sent to Grassley's office. And because Grassley had asked whether or not Weiss sought any federal authority under, the statute to independently bring charges against Hunter Biden. And, Weiss was really unclear. And he was saying that he said, I have not requested special counsel designation. I had discussions with department officials. The Federalist reprinted the letter from Weiss on this. They said I had discussions with department officials that would allow me to file charges. I was assured I'd be granted this authority if it proved necessary. So the question that who decides if it's necessary?
Right. No, we don't know. That's a question we want to ask him. Because frankly, we don't know. That's one of the many questions I think we have for.
Is it Garland?
For Mr. Weiss. Well, I think in the end, it's got to be the Attorney General. It's always the way it works. It was the Attorney General who actually stepped aside, and then it was Rosenstein who stepped in and said, I'm going to make a special counsel, the Mueller special counsel. So it's always the top people at the Justice Department who make this decision. Here's what's interesting, too. We initially wrote Merrick Garland about concerns we had a couple months ago. We wrote the Attorney General, but he didn't respond back to us. Mr. Weiss did on behalf of the attorney. That was we've never seen that in our time in Congress where that took place, and it was in a pretty quick turnaround. Normally these things take forever, and there's a back and forth, but we wrote to the Attorney General. He doesn't respond. It's actually the U.S. Attorney from Delaware who did. So there's been all kinds of unusual things go on here, and who makes that decision? Who made that decision? I think it's ultimately the Attorney General. One of the questions we want to get an answer to.
Which would completely invalidate the claims that he had made. He had a big show of it. You remember that press conference where he goes out and says, it's a completely independent investigation. We are not in any way, trying to thwart this investigation. I don't have any hand in it. He was saying that it wasn't politicized at all. Well, this would completely contradict that and then raise the question, well, what else have you politicized?
Well, we know, according to the whistleblower, that the Assistant U.S. Attorney, Ms. Wolf, she's tipping off the Biden lawyers when the investigative team are doing interviews of people involved in the case. She also told the investigators, Mr. Shapley and others, when you ask people, when you're interviewing people as part of your investigation, don't bring up President Biden. Don't use the term the big guy. Well, why those parameters? Why those instructions given to the team doing the investigation, particularly when you're talking to Mr. Shapley, the expert in this area, the guy who's handled these big cases in the past for the agency? Makes no sense other than there's a different standard being applied.
Right.
And I say all the time, 4 out of 10 Americans think there's a problem at the FBI. 6 out of 10 Americans think there's a double standard. They think that because there is. They can see what has happened at the FBI over the last few years. That's why we got a lot of important questions for Chris Wray tomorrow when he testifies.
That goes right into, he is testifying tomorrow, Christopher Wray talking to Congressman Jim Jordan, because there's a lot of questions, I'm sure, with Christopher Wray. Like, does he, I'm fascinated to know whether or not he agrees with the conclusions of the Durham report. If that's something that, if he agrees with those, if he thought that the FBI violated, the rights of people like Carter Page, if he thought that there was enough evidence to open Operation Crossfire, because I don't think we actually have clear answers on that yet, Congressman.
Well, I think there wasn't clear evidence, according to Mr. Durham. What Mr. Wray thinks about that, he'll just tell us, oh, we've implemented more training, we have more safeguards in place, more procedures, more protocols. He'll say that. Really? Because since you've put in all those safeguards and protocols, we know that over 204,000 times there were queries done to the Section 702 database, which is part of the FISA law, queries done that were done in an illegal fashion. So I don't know that all the training and protocols and procedures are working based on that particular fact. So I think that's what he would say. But we know for certain, according to Mr. Durham, as you know, Dana, that there was no predicate, no probable cause, no reason whatsoever to launch that investigation, Crossfire Hurricane, and they violated all the norms. They ran it out of headquarters instead of out of the field office like they're supposed to, and a bunch of things they did wrong, lying to the FISA court, and on we could go. So, those are some of the questions he'll get tomorrow, too, is relative to how the FISA law needs to be changed, because we're not going to reauthorize FISA Section 702 in its current form. No way.
Good.
No way are we going to do that.
That's good to hear. Talking with Congressman Jim Jordan. He's going to be questioning Wray tomorrow as he goes before to testify. I wanted to ask you, get your reaction about this story that came out. I was looking at this, the tweet that the DOJ put out yesterday where they brought charges against Gal Luft, the one whistleblower. That was a very interesting timeline. Like, they said he was missing, but he wasn't missing. I kind of get the sense that he knew what was coming, so he decided, it all came out because he was anticipating this. But how is it that somebody like this guy can get charges against them under FARA, but yet Hunter Biden, whom apparently he worked with, who was also working with China, is not registered under FARA? He got another law he gets to skate by?
Yeah, so they go after this guy on a FARA violation, and as you point out, they were both working for this Chinese energy company, CEFC. So again, one of the mysteries of how our Justice Department works, and this two-tiered system, this double standard system. Who knows? But there are so many things that why were they so reluctant? Why won't Chris Wray let the country, the whole Congress, let alone the country, see the 1023 form? We had to see it in a redacted form. Only members of the committee on the Oversight Committee could see it. It's like, there's so many problems here. And first, they wouldn't even tell us whether it existed or not. So there's a host of questions about this whole investigation. That's why Gary Shapley and another whistleblower have come forward. And of course, I think what's really interesting is they've been retaliated against. The same Department of Justice is doing all these things. They're the ones who kicked Mr. Shapley, the expert in this area. They kicked him off the investigation. So that'll be, I think, a line of questioning for some of our members tomorrow as well. Considering
the nature of the way that these charges were brought against Luft, do you think that this is just more retaliation by the DOJ?
I don't know. We may get into that tomorrow. I think more of that will probably come from the Oversight Committee. But there's just so many things that, again, I always come back to. There's a reason why a majority of the country thinks there's a double standard. And it's sad because it's not supposed to be that way in our great country. The greatest country ever. It's supposed to be equal application of the law, equal treatment under the law. And we're just not seeing that, and that's a big concern.
Now, we're seeing these agencies, whether it's the FBI getting involved in the Pittsburgh investigation. I mean, we're seeing, FBI, Secret Service intervene in all of these different investigations regarding this White House family. And meanwhile, my goodness, nowadays, if you're going to sell something on eBay or Etsy or do any kind of Venmo transaction and you're above the $600 limit, the IRS will come knocking on your door. But then they'll penalize somebody for blowing the whistle on someone like Hunter Biden for the financial activities in which he's engaged. There is a double standard. Last question for you, talking with Jim Jordan. Is there going to be some kind of immunity for left or some of these whistleblowers that are coming forward? Because I made mention that, I obviously think that, I have issues with a lot of these departments, but there are some good people within the departments that are bringing this information out, and that's why we know of it. Is what's being done to make sure that these whistleblowers are protected?
Well, we try to highlight the issue because, again, the retaliation comes from the agency that they're coming to tell Congress about. We can't give them any kind of real immunity. Only that can come from a executive branch, the Justice Department, if there's any type of, solving some crime. But we're gonna continue to highlight Garrett Boyle. Garrett Boyle was selected for a special unit. He came and talked to us about a number of issues. Garrett Boyle, FBI agent, selected for a special unit. They fly him across the country, move all his belongings. The day he lands here in the D.C. area for this new unit he's been selected for, because he's done great work, they take his clearance, they take his pay, they take his kids' clothes. They don't even let him get access to his belongings, for goodness sake. He had to use his own money. It's like, this is how they come after you if you dare to tell Congress and, more importantly, the American people about what's going on. God bless these people who are willing to do it.
Yeah, they're having their lives ruined for telling the truth to the American people. We appreciate your efforts to make more and more people aware of it. Congressman Jim Jordan, we're going to be watching tomorrow. Sure to be fireworks. I'm sure we'll play some of the clips on air. Thank you so much. It's good talking with you.
You too, Dana. Take care.